Hello, everyone, and welcome to People of Interest. I'm your host, Miguel Guanipa. This is a show that is about or based on stories from people like me and you. Today, I have a very special guest. He was born in Endicott, New York. He moved to Massachusetts in 1985. He's a career journalist and an author. Currently, he's writing a novel about his family. And he's a father of three, grandfather of seven, and great-grandfather of two. This is Mr. Rod Lee. Mr. Lee, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Miguel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming over. Just before, earlier we were talking about this particular, you do love to write. That's what we talked about. You're a journalist, or you wrote most of your life.
Right, and I'm semi-retired now, so I devote a lot of my time to writing.
Yeah. So a lot of the writing that you do is for newspapers.
So I write 2 articles a week for the Yankee Express, Blackstone Valley Express, which a lot of people in the area are familiar with. Circulation is pretty large.
Yeah.
I do the Rambler, which is published once a month, and I do that electronically. It's mostly sent out to an email subscriber list.
Can you get it in the mail like this, the Rambler?
No, I sell it at the newsstand a little bit.
You brought this one, which is for...
I brought that along for you, but I print a few copies to sell at the newsstand.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I was curious about the name, the Rambler.
So the Rambler, going way back, Samuel Johnson in England, he published a pamphlet called The Rambler.
Yes.
That's kind of where I got my idea, but also because I get around a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of a rambling man, so
Yeah,
hence the title, The Rambler. I like the title.
I'm very impressed because I knew about the Rambler. That's why I wanted to ask you about it. I thought
Right.
Samuel Johnson is being invoked a lot in the current hearings that they're having.
Right.
In
the
the
Washington.
Senate. Yeah. But anyway, the Rambler. That's a great. It's a great title.
It's a catchy title.
Yes.
And
But you don't write as how do you say? It's almost when you read Samuel Johnson's writings. I have to read the passages maybe 4 or 5 times.
Right.
Which is great. I love that stuff. I love
Right.
it when it's that meaty like that.
Right. Well, what I try to do is pick topics, material that isn't in the everyday news cycle that you would see in the Telegram or the Milford News or wherever.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to pick my own material. I only come out once a month. It's basically an 8-page publication. So I have to hit my mark every month with what I think is interesting to people.
Yeah.
On the back there, I did a piece on the Catholic Church
Right.
and all the problems they're having.
Yeah.
And Bishop Sheen and William F. Buckley were 2 people that I looked up to, now deceased, but I looked up to them a great deal, and they were kind of model Catholics.
William Buckley. Yes.
William F. Buckley, he started National Review magazine, and he was a fairly controversial guy, but he was a very devout Catholic. So anyway, you can read it when you get a chance, and I kind of took off on a lot of the problems the Catholic Church is having now, and get your act together type of thing.
It's a pretty cool picture that you have of yourself.
Thank you.
With the hat, and then you look like a detective there. Well, that's pretty good. And you also brought a book.
Yes,
That's-
Shoetown.
Yeah, so this is about Endicott, correct?
It's about Endicott, where I grew up. And it was actually where the home of Endicott Johnson Shoes. And it was also where IBM started, which a lot of people
Really?
don't know that. Yeah, IBM began in Endicott and grew from there. The founder of the shoe company was George F. Johnson, and he was like the Whitens here in Whitensville. He was very benevolent towards the town. And as your daughter suggested with the parks, he built playgrounds, he built schools. He just gave a lot back to the community.
Was he in politics at all, or was
No.
he just?
No, he was originally from Milford. He was originally from
Really?
the Milford area. Yeah, but he started the shoe company in Endicott, and the town just flourished because of him. And growing up there, it's nothing like that now. It's very depressed.
Yeah, a lot of places in upstate New York for some reason. Yeah.
But he did a lot of good. He's a very revered figure back home. There's a monument to him. There's an arch that you cross under when you go from one part of town to another.
Yeah.
And the expression on the arch is "Home of the Square Deal," because he gave everybody a square deal. He took care of people. My grandparents bought their house from him on a payroll deduction.
Oh,
They called him E.J. Holmes.
you can't do that anymore, though.
No, no,
That
but
sounds great, though. That sounds like
yeah,
a great idea.
yeah. My grandfather worked in the tannery. He slung hides, and no, George
Really?
F. Johnson. Yeah,
Oh, okay, because I told you I did leather, so.
yeah,
So he
yeah.
worked
He
with
worked with
hides?
leather. Yep,
Really?
yep.
Huh.
My grandfather,
Huh.
and the company took care of people.
Mm.
You know, and people worked for the company forever, 35, 40 years.
Yeah, you don't hear about that.
You don't hear about
anymore.
that anymore.
So let's say we go back a little bit. You were in Endicott, so you're born in Endicott. Your family have brothers and sisters.
I have
or
3 brothers,
Three brothers. You
no sisters.
pretty much grew up in Endicott.
We grew up in Endicott. My
Were you
wife
the
grew-
youngest or
I was the oldest.
the oldest? Okay.
Yep, oldest of 4.
So your wife, what? I'm sorry.
She grew up across the river, the Susquehanna River in Vestal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we met, we married, and we've been.
You
we've
swam across the river and met her there?
been, no,
That's not how it happened?
no one would swim across that river.
No, it's a big, big river.
It's big and it's kind of dirty.
Oh,
Or it
okay.
used to be anyway.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, journalism has kind of taken me around the block a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But we ended up in Massachusetts in 1985.
Okay.
I was working in Brookline as editor of a group of weekly newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what brought us here. And that didn't work out so well, but
They won on Brookline or
uh,
this year? You
the
mean?
job.
The job, yeah,
yeah.
okay. So you kind of like let that job go, and then what happened?
No, I lost that job.
Yeah.
That was
I
kind
was
of one
trying
of
to put
the,
it nicely with it.
that was kind of one of the setbacks that,
Oh.
you know, I know you like to talk about that with people.
Oh, well, yeah, now, that's the thing, that's what I wanted to build a foundation that you're saying, like, when did you move to Massachusetts?
1985.
And you were already married, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, three children.
But before then, a little bit before then. you
So
grew up-
before that, I started my newspaper career in Binghamton,
Mhm.
which is near Endicott,
Yeah,
in sports, in the sports department, writing sports stories.
yeah,
We moved to Plattsburgh, which is upstate near the Canadian border, for a sports job.
Mhm.
That's where our oldest daughter was born.
yeah,
I worked for a time in Newburgh, which is north of New York City, 40 miles north of New York. We went back to Binghamton.
always in the writing field. Always writing, always writing.
Always writing, yeah, writing.
Yeah.
In '85 is when I got this offer to come to Brookline to be with a group of weekly newspapers,
Yeah, okay.
the Citizen Group publications. So we moved here. We've been here ever since. We lived in Worcester when we first moved here. We moved to Northbridge in '88, and we've been in Northbridge ever since.
So what were some of the challenges then after you moved here and you got that job?
So the biggest thing, and I was telling this to my wife, you know, in anticipation of being on your show, was I lost the job in Brookline in '88.
Yeah.
It was kind of a strange set of circumstances because the people who owned the publications weren't really newspaper people. They didn't really know entirely what they were doing. They were kind of flying by the seat of their pants. They didn't like the way things were going, direction everything was headed. So I lost that job and wasn't sure what I was going to do after that because we had only been in Massachusetts for 2.5 years, so I wasn't really that familiar with the landscape.
And
or
you
anything.
lived most of your time in upstate New York.
Upstate
Yeah.
New York.
Okay.
Fortunately, you know, I was able to find a job as editor of the Tribune before, not this Tribune, but when it was like a tabloid newspaper. And, you know, I got that job. I actually interviewed in Worcester at the Worcester Business Journal, at the Worcester magazine.
Yeah.
But the job of the Tribune was open, so I got that job. And then in 90, 88, 91, 93, I started my own publication called the Northbridge Times, which was pretty popular here in town. Yeah.
So you decided to go on your own?
Yeah, I went on my own,
Okay.
started my own hometown paper,
Huh.
the Northbridge Times. I did that for 5 years, and then I went to work for the Telegram for 11 years.
Telegram Gazette.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
writing business stories.
Oh, okay.
And I retired in '09.
So you all your life, I mean, before, not all your life, but most of your life you've been writing.
Uh, It's even more the case now because I write so, I'm able to
Yeah.
write so much because I have more time.
Do you feel more relaxed now that you don't
Ye-
have a lot of deadline pressures like you
Yeah,
used to?
yeah. I
Or?
have deadlines with the Express.
Yeah.
I have 2 articles a week that are due by every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a lot of other time when I can write of my own, like my novel that I'm working on now.
Okay.
So um, that's that. I write early in the morning for like 3 hours, 3, 4 hours.
Mm.
Yeah.
What are some of the things in this novel that are going to be important things to?
So the novel is called For Pete's Sake,
Okay.
and it's a play on the fact that I had a lot of guilt when we moved up here because
Oh.
of what the family went through.
Okay.
Um, and it was kind of a selfish move to some degree.
The relocation and all that
Yeah,
was
I
hard
mean,
on them.
my oldest daughter was a sophomore in high school,
Oh, okay.
and it was a tough move for her.
Mm.
Um, so, in thinking about, in trying to tell our story, the five of us, and what we've gone through,
Yeah.
including alcohol and drugs with the two younger ones,
Mm-hmm.
to be perfectly frank with you, my wife had some difficulties. Everybody had
Mm.
difficulties with the move transitioning from a small town
Mm-hmm.
because we initially moved to Worcester, which is a big city.
Yeah.
It was a very traumatic thing for everybody, and I didn't foresee some of the
Mm.
problems that we were going to face.
Mm.
So I carried a lot of guilt for a long time. So that's why the title, For Pete's Sake. And I go through kind of everything that happened to us,
Mm-hmm.
which was like all kinds of things. We had a house fire, we had a car accident,
Wow.
the two younger ones got into alcohol and drugs.
With the boys or girls? So.
No, my oldest is a girl,
Yeah.
my middle one is a boy, and then my youngest one is a girl.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's how they kind of try to cope with
Yeah.
all the changes and all
Yeah,
that.
well, the
Eventually.
initial thing, the very first thing that happened was my oldest daughter ran away. She was
Mm.
15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and we had only been here for a couple of months.
15 years old.
15 years old. She
Mm.
took a bus and went back home.
Oh, she wanted to go back home.
She wanted to go back home,
Oh.
and that was a tough time for her. So
Oh. Did she make it home?
she
Back
made
home?
it. She made it, and I went and got her.
You wanting?
I went and got her. I told her she couldn't. She couldn't do that.
Mm.
So she came back, and everybody adjusted in their own way.
Yeah.
Um,
So because it was kind of like a decision that was made to pursue something that you were pursuing, then
career.
and it kind of upset a lot of things in the family. But then you started feeling, oh,
Yeah.
this happened because of what I did.
Yeah, we went
Yeah.
through counseling, and
Wow.
unfortunately, my son, who's now 45,
Yeah.
and my daughter Caroline, who's 44, they had a lot of alcohol and drug issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fortunately, everybody survived. Everybody's still kind of trying to cope with all the repercussions. We went through counseling and everything.
Yeah.
So it's that's what the book is about. It's about our journey.
So do you ever sit down with them and then you look back and look at the journey like in hindsight? And
Yeah.
say, oh,
And we do, and we're very close.
and they're
You
able
know.
to kind of like, hey, you know what, that was.
Oh, we've moved a lot.
Yeah.
We've moved beyond that a lot.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because you have to,
Yeah.
and my son had the hardest time because he kind of held on to his resentment
Mm-hmm.
for a long time,
Yeah.
and he couldn't understand why I had to move 300 miles
Yeah.
to take a job, and
Yeah. He was young, so.
he was young.
Yeah.
They were both in grade school. My oldest daughter was a sophomore at North High in Worcester.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I thought clearly enough about some of the issues that would crop up by moving them into a big city
Mm-hmm.
with large ethnic population that they weren't accustomed to from
Yeah.
where they came from, a small town.
Right.
And that's what, it's kind of, the book is kind of an explanation of what I've gone through trying to make amends to my family.
Mm.
And fortunately for me, it's worked out a lot better for me than it did for them.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, what are some of the things that you were doing? You were saying make amends. What were the things?
just
that
by
you were-
being a good father. And
So when you moved in here, when do you begin to see these repercussions emerge?
right away,
Right away.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
yeah, Amanda ran away. And
What? I'm sorry.
Amanda.
Oh,
that's-
okay, yeah, right
She,
away.
she ran away. and it wasn't anything she told us about. She just up and left.
Mm-hmm.
And she took a bus from Worcester to Albany and then changed buses and got to Binghamton.
Yeah.
And I guess her boyfriend picked her up.
Mm.
She had left a boyfriend back there.
Yeah.
So there were all kinds of scenarios that could have played out
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if she had got on the wrong bus.
Right.
You know, if she had ended up in New York City and been abducted or whatever, which
Yeah. Well,
all
those
these
are the
things-
things, the kind of things that you imagine when that happens.
and
right?
I did imagine it,
Yeah.
you know, and you think about those kind
Yeah.
of things. And
Yeah.
we didn't know where she was for a couple of days.
So that was hard for everybody. Yeah.
But she is now, we're very close, she and I.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, she's a great girl. She's done well. She's got 3 children of her own. She lives in Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
She very crafty. She does a lot of craft type things.
Yeah.
Very family oriented, and
Well adjusted.
very
everything's
well
going-
adjusted. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She's done the best of the 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2 are still struggling.
Mm.
But like I said, we're all close. We have a family gathering every Saturday night
Mm-hmm.
at our house, at my wife and I's house. And we get together a lot of other times too, you know, and special events, special times of year, all that kind of thing, Christmas and all that. So, all in all, yeah, I think it was a story that needed to be told. I hope
Yeah.
I've been fair to everybody. It's fictionalized,
Mm-hmm.
so their names are changed.
Yeah.
But they'll know who they are, and everybody in my family will know who they are.
Have you? Did you get input from them to write some of it, or?
Only to the extent that I'm sharing stories that we know,
Yeah.
that we've been through.
Right.
You know, the car accident, the house fire, Mandy running away, Daniel's problems, Caroline's problems, and I've taken some liberties with those only to the extent that it's like fictionalized, so they're different characters. You know, they have different names.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's an interesting story.
Yeah.
I think, you know, not to say that we've gone through anything that maybe any other family hasn't gone through. It's just,
Yeah.
it's been very traumatic for us.
But this is very personal.
Very
Also,
personal. Yeah,
yeah.
very personal. I even thought about doing it as nonfiction. And, you know,
Yeah.
and then I thought, there are a lot of other people I name in the book that I want to protect their identities.
Yeah. So that sounds like you could make a really good story as a fiction. And a lot of fiction stories are from real stories anyway, right?
Yeah, yeah, and because the 2 younger ones are still struggling, we went to a wedding. My youngest brother's son was getting married in Waterloo, New York last year.
Yeah.
So we went up there. My youngest brother's also a writer. He's published a book, and he asked me how For Pete's Sake was coming along, and I said, well, yeah, it's coming real well. I've got good material. I'm looking to be done with it fairly soon. I just don't know how it's going to end, whether it's going to be a happy ending or a sad ending.
Oh,
But then you never know because it just goes on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's ongoing.
A lot of European movies are like that. But
Yeah.
no, that. I mean, every family has their struggles, and I think that when those struggles are shared, then there's a sort of like it's a way to identify with that person and say, oh, well, I went through that too, and which is
Yeah,
Oh.
my hope is that it kind of like ties everything that's happened to us together, and that we're stronger because of it, not weaker.
Mhm.
So
you got to find an ending for the book, though.
yeah, I'm writing the ending right now,
Are
and
you going to continue in the same vein where you're not gonna just change it and just this is where it ends and that's just the way it is, whether it's happy or not completely happy, or
Yeah, I
just
think,
reality,
right now I think it's going to be a happy ending with just you know how we coped, and we've weathered the storm, and
yeah,
you know the children are all middle-aged now.
yeah,
We're all still together. The grandchildren are all right here.
grandchildren, yeah, you have grandchildren,
Have grandchildren we love, and a lot of families get scattered all over the place,
yeah.
including our own on both
Yours
sides.
are close by. Your family's close by.
Everybody's close by, which is a real blessing.
Yeah.
You know, so we're very fortunate in that regard.
Was I was thinking about actually it's just probably be like a standard thought that most people have, and it may sound kind of trite, but are there places where you kind of look back and think, uh, or ask yourself the question, if I had to do it over again, and 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 is your answer like most people's answers that I hear are, no, I wouldn't change it. I know that it was hard and I knew that it was challenging, but it was what it was meant to be. Do you find yourself saying that, or
I do, and I reflect on that in the book a lot.
yeah?
There's a part in the book where I write about my wife who worked in a nursing home in Worcester. She was a nurse and an LPN, and she worked at a nursing home in Worcester. And her state of disillusionment got so intense at some point, and she just revealed to me recently, that she thought when she was leaving work one night, going on 290 to get on 146 South to come to Northbridge, if she took the exit for the Mass Pike, she could go on home to Vestal and
To
put a-
Vestalin?
to Vestal.
Where's Vestal?
Vestal was where she was from.
Oh,
Vestal, yeah.
so
Back and leave it all behind.
Oh,
You know, even though she loves me and we've been married like 50 years.
yeah. That
the
was
thought-
during that time that you was thinking that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
I mean, the thought crossed her mind.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are the
Wow.
kind of things, you know. But then I get into the personalities of all of us a lot too,
Yeah.
each one. So it's like 20 chapters and an epilogue. So it's going to be a pretty good sized book. You know, I think I've covered a lot of ground with it.
Well, that's good. And now your children, what are your children like? Are they, whose personality did they inherit, you think?
So I'd say my oldest daughter is, she's very sensitive.
Yeah.
She's got a very good personality, but she's not an outgoing person. She's kind of shy, you know, and that's part of the amazing thing about her leaving and
Leaving,
running
yeah.
away,
Yeah.
having that much independence, which she had never shown before.
Yeah.
My son he's kind of in between. My youngest daughter is the outgoing one. She's like the life of the party type girl.
Like you.
Yeah, well, no, even more than me. She's always been able to stand up for herself,
Yeah.
you know, regardless of the circumstances. Even though she's a little thing, very short, and but she's from a very young age. She's never been afraid of anything, you know, and she's not like the other two in that regard. I mean, Amanda and Daniel are more. They're more shy and sensitive type people than she is. She's very outgoing, very boisterous, bubbly type person. You know, I don't know where she got that from.
Maybe from your wife or from you? Maybe you're
No.
hiding something? Or?
I don't know, you know, but they're all great kids. And
Now, when you think about, I mean, I love to talk about the Rambler and Samuel Johnson, but it's just one more thing on this subject. You were talking about that guilt that you felt, and have you come to terms with that and say,
I have, you know, it's funny you should mention that because my son lost his license, so he can't drive. He has a lot of issues he's still dealing with. And I've become, over the years, he had a custody battle for his three girls. So he's been to court. I've been his chauffeur, his bankroller to some extent, his supervisor for visits with his children because of the custody thing between him and his ex-wife. And his drinking kind of got into that picture, so that he was only allowed supervised visits
Yeah.
for a long time with his children. So in that regard, I kind of like stepped in, and I've more than with the other two, I've been there for him because he was the one that felt the most violated by the move more than the other. Even though we went through counseling, we kind of addressed all that with counseling.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's taken him a long time to let go of that resentment.
Yeah.
And that's why I've kind of tried to shoulder the burden of helping him as much as I can to make amends for that. But all of them, I think, to some extent, I've tried to be a good father and husband.
But in what sense did you come to terms with it? Like when you,
Well, that's what I was getting to. So I interviewed a man at the detox center in Millbury,
yeah.
Dennis Bates, and he's actually writing a book too about care of people in recovery with dignity. Very nice man.
Yeah.
And so we were, after I interviewed him about the detox facility, we were in his office, and I was sharing with him about For Pete's Sake and the book and everything, and the guilt I carried for many years. And he said to me, "You should stop beating yourself up about it. You've more than made amends." You know, and that kind of resonated with me because I have. You know, it's been 31 years. My son started drinking when he was 14. He actually started drinking before we moved. So you can only carry that for so long when you've done your very best to be a good father and husband. And that's what he was telling me. He said, just let it go. You know, you've more than made up, and they're all middle-aged now. So my oldest daughter will turn 50 next year.
Yeah.
So
And you feel that you freed yourself from
yeah,
that.
I freed myself from it, but
Well, it's a good thing.
yeah, it's a good thing.
I mean,
It's a-
sometimes we think about your father, your parents, so you have responsibilities, and look, I'm preaching to you now, but everybody has to eventually take responsibility for their own
Yeah, and
actions.
the interesting thing too is that my wife and I grew up in a place that was a lot different than what we moved our children to, and we didn't have any of those kind of issues or problems. We both came from very good families, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody has skeletons in their closet, that type of thing. But, and that's another big reason why I had such a hard time dealing with everything, because I didn't foresee what it was going to be like for them.
Yeah.
You know, they just had a very difficult
And yet,
time.
what you were doing was for the family. Eventually, I mean, you were looking
You
for a
know,
better
I
job and
I thought it
support
was,
the
you know,
family. Yeah.
you know, trying to
Yeah.
improve my own career.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, it's worked out well for me because I've been able to write books and work for different publications and meet a lot of great people that I've become friends with, and I've got a huge network of friends, and I belong to business associations in Worcester. I got to be pretty well known in the city, and so I've won awards. It's worked out good for me. Not so much for the rest of them,
Yeah.
and they're very proud of what I've done, but that still is kind of in the background all the time of what, you know, what we went through.
Yeah.
But I mean, my son has 3 girls now. My oldest daughter has 3 children. My youngest daughter has a daughter. So that's the 7 grandchildren. And you know, that's something that you can't just dismiss. I mean, that's important. You know, and we're all close. The grandchildren are close.
Well, let's see if we can cheer this conversation up a little bit then. So there's no, I mean, I'm glad you shared all that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being open about that.
Yeah.
There's this quote by this book that you gave me, which I'm very grateful for. Thank
Sure.
you very much. This is what you wrote here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. It says, all roads lead back to our hometown. So what's the significance? I got my own interpretation, but what's the significance for you on that?
So you never let go of your roots. And the thing about Shoetown was that there's a chapter in there about President Reagan when he was running for re-election. He came to town and he spoke in the football stadium. And football is a big part of the book because the 2 schools that we went to, my wife and I, were big football schools. And I write a lot about the coach that was my coach at my high school.
Yeah.
But when Reagan came through, the football stadium was full of people. There were helicopters overhead, and we all went to watch this speech. And there were people with rifles on top of the high school to make sure
Yeah.
everything was okay. But there was an expression, and when all the immigrants came to Endicott to work in the shoe factory, they didn't even know how to speak English. So their only expression was, "Which way, EJ?"
Which way, EJ?
Which way, EJ? Point me towards Endicott Johnson, the shoe company,
Oh, EJ.
where
Which
I'm
way,
going to work.
EJ?
Which way,
Endicott
EJ? So
Johnson. Oh.
he and I have a whole chapter about Reagan in there, and him talking about how the immigrants came to Endicott, flooded in like everybody did to, New York and everything from
Yeah.
Ellis Island, and
Yeah.
but looking for work, and they'd heard that there were jobs in the shoe factory, and so.
So are you planning to go back to Endicott at some
I
point?
go back. I've been back 3 times for book signings for that book,
Yeah.
but we don't go back as much anymore. I have 2 brothers there,
Yeah.
2 younger brothers there.
Oh, your
And-
brothers live over there still.
Yeah, I have 2 brothers who still live in that area.
Yeah.
My wife has a sister who lives in that area. So, yeah, and like I said, it's very depressed. There was an avenue, which I write a lot about in the book, a shopping avenue,
Yeah.
right off the main street from my high school. And all the EJ workers, all the IBM workers, all the high school kids, we used to go to the avenue at lunchtime and go to the pizza shops and the Five and Dimes. And so the avenue was a real bustling place.
Yeah. Not
And-
anymore?
No,
No.
it's very sad to go home now. It's the housing prices are very bad. There's no employment much. EJ is gone. IBM is mostly gone. The only thing really there now is the State University in Binghamton. Yep.
Get students there so they kind of,
Yeah, it's a big school.
yeah,
It's got very big.
that helps the town sometimes.
Yeah, but total change from like when I was growing up, and very hard to accept. So
Gotta find a way to get some vitality there. Let's talk about, you're a reader. You must be a reader too. I mean, you
Oh, I read all the
Samuel
time.
Johnson,
yeah, I read a lot.
a dictionary that he wrote.
Oh yeah, I wish I never saw that, but
I saw one. I saw one for sale.
Really?
It was an abridged dictionary.
okay.
I think it was because my wife is from upstate New York. It was probably at one of those kind of like antique sale places.
Right.
And they had. I'm always looking at the books and see.
Yeah.
And I saw his dictionary there,
Yeah.
but it was like an abridged, recent publication. It wasn't like an old publication. But I always thought. I mean, I Samuel Johnson was incredible.
He was, and he was really the first person to really do a dictionary of that kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what little I know about it
Yeah.
is he had very interesting interpretations for words.
Yes, yeah, I understand
Yeah.
he would actually put, on occasion, he would throw something in there that was related to current political climate or something
Right.
on a definition. So yeah, he was like that. But what was it?
He was very bright and witty.
Yeah.
He had a circle of friends, Boswell, and
Yes.
these
yeah.
people who hung around with him. And
Who wrote his
Right.
The Life of Samuel Johnson.
The Life
yeah.
of Samuel Johnson. But I mean, he was an entertaining character too.
Yes. Yeah.
Very entertaining.
Yeah, I understand that. This is what amazes me about when I read about him. It was that there would be people that would come to see him in gatherings because they just wanted to listen to him. And that's amazing to me.
It is.
I mean, you think of today, you think of the art of conversation, of the art of speaking. That was something that he must have had tremendous command of. And he wasn't. I believe that he wasn't. He was against independence in this country.
He was.
Yeah.
That's right. He was. Yeah.
He didn't like the idea. So
No, he didn't.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but I love that. I love the.
Yeah.
He was great to have here.
He didn't necessarily write great books like Dickens or
Yeah.
somebody like that.
Yeah, isn't that funny? But
Yeah,
he
it
has-
is funny. But he wrote a lot of like criticism essays
Yeah,
and
yeah.
poetry and things like
The
that.
Rambler.
Yeah. He published the Rambler, but he goes. I mean, most people don't. A lot of people don't even know who he is
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
He's
I
not that
mean,
well known today.
I only found out about him because I read a quote. Uh, and I thought, this is incredible. Who wrote this? Samuel Johnson. And then I said, I got to find more about this guy.
Yeah,
But it said, his quote was, when a man knows that he is going to the gallows in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind beautifully.
I would think so.
Or something to the effect beautifully, or just the way he put that thought into
Yeah.
words.
Yeah,
That it's going to be your last day,
yeah.
and you just focused.
I have a copy of the Boswell, The Life of Johnson.
Yeah.
I have a copy of that,
Yeah.
like a hardcover copy. That's kind of a pretty rare copy.
Wow.
I picked it up somewhere.
Yeah.
And what I always enjoyed most was his repartee with people, and how somebody would make a comment about something,
Yeah.
and Samuel Johnson would make some argumentative comment that was just brilliant,
Yeah.
just some kind of a comeback.
Yeah.
That
That's a great. That's a great loss.
great skill.
In
Yeah,
our society today,
Yeah.
because you can't. People don't know. Well, there are people, I'm sure, out there that could have it, but it's just rare.
yeah,
Especially because, I mean, if you turn the TV on and you want to watch something, you watch the talking heads and people discussing. There's no dialogue. There's no.
no, that's right. It's a lost art.
But I mean, we're going back to the 1700s.
I
huh?
know. Yeah, you don't see that type of. Of course, there were no TV or anything around then, but. And he wasn't. I don't recall that he was highly educated. I know he read a lot. And he was very sickly as a child, but
Mm-hmm.
he had some deformity with his eyesight and
Yeah.
things like that. But
Yeah.
no, interesting guy. I've always admired everything I can find out about him.
Yeah. There's supposed to be something kind of peculiar about him. Sometimes that people would observe him and notice maybe kind of ticks or things like that.
Exactly.
And so there's something wrong with this guy.
Exactly, exactly. He came across, people thought he was very odd.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know he married, and he was very devoted to his wife. She died long before he did.
Hmm.
And that kind of crushed him a lot to lose his wife. Letty, something like that, but I forget her name. But no, he was a huge figure from that period.
Yeah.
Very big.
Now, is there something else besides writing that and reading that
Music.
music? What in the field of music are you interested in?
So I'm a big music fan. Folk music, gospel music, acoustic. I'm trying to learn to play the guitar now at a late age.
Yeah, well, that's
You know,
how's it coming along?
I picked up a $35 guitar on Church Street
Yeah.
at that antique store before it closed.
Oh,
Yeah, the one up there.
my daughter just told me she found a guitar that somebody just threw in the garbage.
Yeah. Actually, this is not a bad. It's a 6-string acoustic guitar. It's not bad. It's tuned.
$34 is pretty
30.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I'd wanted to do that for a while,
Yeah.
but I listen to music a lot, and I really appreciate all types of music, really.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Rap too.
to some extent,
Just
if I could understand it a little more.
put you on the spot there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my grandchildren are singing along in the back. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. What are some of the some places this writing has taken you to different places in the country and other places also?
It's taken me to different, not necessarily different places so much as different settings and different people and
Mm-hmm.
different scenarios. I had another book in mind that I might write someday, a newspaper book, and it's about. There were 2 newspapers where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
One was the large daily, the afternoon paper. One was the small morning tabloid, which is the one that I started when I first started working. I worked for the smaller one.
Mm-hmm.
There was an office building that was built in downtown Binghamton called the State Office Building.
Yeah.
Hugh Carey was the governor of New York State at the time. They found out that the building had PCBs in it.
PCBs? What is it?
PCBs are poly. It's a hazard.
Oh, okay, all right.
PCBs.
Yeah.
It was a famous incident anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and there were all these discussions about what to do about the PCBs. And Hugh Carey, the governor, said, "Ah, that's nothing. I'll drink a cupful of them."
Yeah. Did he?
No, I don't think he ever did. But he was kind of dismissive of the whole thing,
Yeah.
you know. And so I had this idea of a book about a battle between two newspapers and how the bigger paper always wins. But then the little paper gets this scoop about the PCBs in the state office building, and they kind of break the story, you know, and they kind of outdo the big paper. And then it would incorporate a lot of the people that I worked with, I knew about at that time, from both sides of the, you know, the field there.
Have you
So-
read fiction or?
Oh yeah, I
or
read
ma-
fiction
you-
all the time.
What do you write to read? More fiction or nonfiction?
Both.
Both?
I usually have a fiction book going and a nonfiction book going.
Kind of
on.
silly for me to ask you, have you read fiction? I'm sure you, I mean, if you read a lot of stuff, but what I was getting at was that, do you find, which one, do you find fiction books more entertaining or more informative or nonfiction? I mean,
Pretty much more entertaining.
because I know you said you wanted to do, you were thinking also when you were doing your family,
Right.
you were thinking
Think
about,
about doing non.
yeah,
Yeah. I may even at this point change it, you know, but I doubt
Yeah.
it. I'm going to keep it fictionalized.
so what were some of the books that you were reading that started to inspire you to get into that?
You know, I've stuck with the classics to a great extent.
Yeah.
You know, Mark Twain, Hemingway, Dickens. I love Dickens. But I'm reading constantly. I like biographies too, especially about writers. I read a lot of biographies about writers. I read one recently about Joan Didion. I don't know if you know her.
Joan Didion.
Didion, yeah.
Didion.
Yeah, she was from California.
Mm.
She wrote. She was married to. I'm trying to remember his name. He died, and she wrote a book about their marriage called "The Year of Magical Thinking." And she wrote some novels. But anyway, I read an interesting biography of her. I read a biography of William Styron, who wrote Sophie's Choice.
Sophie's Choice.
Yeah, which is fiction
Huh?
about a woman who gave up her children and.
Yeah, like there's a movie about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was made into a movie.
Yeah.
So I read about William Styron. I like him. He wrote The Confessions of Nat Turner too, which was another big book. But Sophie's Choice, I read that.
So what was a
Yes.
story or a book that you read that very strongly influenced you as in your life as a person? Or
You know, there's been a lot of them,
yeah,
but
it's a variety of
with Hemingway,
Hemingway. huh?
the book I like the best of his is The Old Man and the Sea, which is a very slim book. It's about Santiago the fisherman,
Yeah.
and it's just a great book. It's how he's the laughing stock of the town because he can't bring in any fish,
Yeah.
and how he goes out to sea, and
Yeah.
he brings back the biggest fish anybody ever saw.
What's the significance behind that? You think? Do you think there's some kind of symbolism in there in that book?
In that book, absolutely, yeah. The underdog can come out on top.
Beyond that, is there anything else you think?
I'm not sure there is.
Because Hemingway was a pretty controversial figure. I mean,
Yeah,
he kind of did himself in the end.
he did, but I mean, his style of writing also was very pervasive. You know, I mean, he kind of revolutionized writing with the simplicity and
Yeah.
just straightforward.
There was
Not a lot of big words or.
Do you read his short stories? Hemingway's
Oh
short
yeah,
stories?
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Because they're absolutely simple. But
Yeah,
there's a lot. in
yeah.
there,
The Snows of Kilimanjaro, The Killers.
Hmm.
Yeah, his short stories. I've got a lot of his stuff.
Huh.
And Mark Twain, I love him. Dickens, like I said, I love everything he's done.
Is there
Oliver
somebody
Twist.
who introduced you to that, to reading? To say,
My parents.
Your
My
parents.
mother.
Your
My mother.
mother.
Yeah,
Oh.
my mother was big on reading.
She was a big reader.
Oh yeah, yeah. She started reading to us when we were young,
Wow. That's
and
great.
Yeah, she kind of instilled that in me.
Mm.
But my wife and I, we read a lot, both of us. And we're
Mm.
always comparing notes about our books.
Well,
We have different tastes.
have you thought about starting book clubs and things like that? Or
No, no.
maybe you could
But
do.
yeah, she's more into, she reads a lot of like women authors,
Mm-hmm.
like Maeve Binchy and people along. She just finished a book by John Grisham
Mm.
that she liked a lot. So we talk about our books, but we don't often read the same books. We usually read different books.
So you're semi-retired or retired completely or
No, I'm I still work.
semi-retired?
Yeah, I'll never retire completely.
Yeah.
I like to work.
What would you like to do? Would you like to do some traveling or like
I'd love
do
to
some?
travel more.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my wife has some health issues, so
Mm.
she's kind of like limited in how much she can travel. Yeah, I'd
Mm.
love to do that more. Um, you know, I have some friends I hang out with to
Well,
get
that's,
out a little bit,
well, that's good.
you know, so. Um, but
What do you see in the next maybe 10 years? What are you thinking about? This is where I'd like to
well,
go.
I'm
I'd
gonna
like to
I'm
think
gonna
about.
continue concentrating on my writing and trying to do more books,
Yeah.
you know, because I think I still have stories in me. So I'm very anxious for this one to come out, see how that does,
Mm.
and then we'll go from there. Probably, I wrote a book, a golf book recently
You
called
did
The Match.
on playing golf or a story about golf?
It's a story about golf.
Huh.
Yeah, that's a fictionalized thing too. Yeah, it's called The Match, and it was something I had in the back of my mind for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you have some stories in your head that someday need to
always,
come out.
always.
Is that also part of a mental health situation that when you do that, it helps you
Yeah,
cleans up and
you know, it's funny because you never know where a book is going to come from. It could come from a little tiny 2-inch story in the newspaper.
yeah, yeah.
You know, so I look around for something that would spark my imagination. I'm not a Stephen King,
Mm.
but you know, I read a book he wrote on writing. It's called On Writing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the best book on writing. In fact, I'd highly recommend
Really?
it to everybody.
Stephen
Yeah.
King.
Go out and buy it. It's called On Writing by Stephen King, and
Hmm.
I've read a bunch of books about how to become an author, how to be a better writer.
That's the best one.
Best one ever. It's great.
Because
It's
a lot of
called
people, obviously, you know what they think of when they think of Stephen King. It's just horror stories, and
Yeah.
that's it. So
Yeah.
that's something that
Yeah.
he stepped outside of his niche there. And
Yeah, I mean, it's a great contribution to people who are aspiring to be writers.
hmm,
I've only ever read 2 of his books, but I'm not a big fan of that type of
yeah.
that.
But the on writing, that was a pretty good one.
Oh, I kept it. It's great.
I'll have
Yeah,
to
I'd recommend it to anybody.
find out about it.
Yeah,
Speaking of Stephen King, like I said, people what they think of those types of writing and not that. But I'm wondering, in your case, for example, have you do you have situations in which you find that, or you are who you are, but other people look at you differently? I guess they would say they judge you. Have you find yourself in that place and where you have people misjudging who you are? Or,
yeah, I think everybody does to some extent,
yeah,
you know, but I haven't run into that too much.
you had a pretty
Yeah.
easy life then.
Yeah, and you know, I'm pretty well known in the area.
Yeah.
I'm pretty well known around here. I've been in town a long time, you know, and like I said, I had the Northbridge Times, which was printed at the Riverdale Mills
Mm-hmm.
by Jim Knott, his people. So I had that for about 5 years, and that was a very political little paper,
Hmm.
and wasn't afraid to stir things up at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it had a good readership, very good readership for a while,
Mm.
you know. But it was just tough to make money doing that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that's why I went to work for the Telegram. Little security there.
When I read in the Yankee when you write, how do you say Yankee? Am I saying it right? My accent, Yankee
Yeah, Express.
Express, and I had a sense that there's a dramatic writer in you that wants to come out. Am I correct in assuming that, or?
Yeah, I think, Miguel, the big thing that I've tried to do, because I was a reporter for so long,
Mm-hmm.
just reporting the facts,
Yeah.
transcribing what occurred. To get away from that and be more creative and to write novels and things like that, that's a tough transition.
Yeah. Okay.
You're kind of locked in that mode that you exercised for so many years. And the trick in being a good novelist, I think, is escaping out of that medium of just straight reporting, telling it just X, Y, Z, A, B, C, this person said this,
Yeah.
and getting into letting your mind wander a little bit and kind of imagine where things would go, what and kind of embellish things in a different way with more color and that type of thing. And that's what I'm striving to do more and more. And I think I'm moving in that direction. I'll never be, a Mark Twain or
Well, you can't just limit yourself.
John
you know?
Steinbecker. Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting thing to make that switch from straight reporting to being more of a creative writer.
But you'd like to be more of that creative writer now.
At this
More.
point, yeah,
Yeah.
It gives me a lot of motivation to do that. I enjoy that a lot. And one of the things that Stephen King said in his book is if you're going to write every day, without exception.
Yeah.
I think he said the only days he took off was his birthday or Christmas or something. But other than that, he wrote every day. He made no exceptions. And that's good advice, I think, because, well, for one thing, to maintain continuity,
Yeah.
to know where you left off and where you want to start again and continue. If you leave it aside for 3-4 days or a week, it's hard to pick it up again, to pick up what you want to do with it from there.
Yeah.
So
you make it a point to write every
I thought
day.
that was one of the best pieces of advice he ever, wrote. So I do that. I write every morning. It's quiet. There's nobody around, and I light a candle and
Do it the old-fashioned way.
I write. Well, I write on the computer, but I'm up in my office and I write,
Yeah.
and there's no distractions or anything. So I enjoy that a lot. I try to tell that to people that I talk to people who are interested in becoming writers, and I try to tell them, whatever you're thinking about, write it down and develop that subject. And don't just make it one paragraph. Try to broaden it out in scope from there. And as I go back through For Pete's Sake and kind of tweak it and fine tune it and everything, that's what I'm doing, is adding stuff, and I'm up to like 50,000 words now. So
So I'm wondering, I never asked you, what's with For Pete's Sake? Why that title?
because of the guilt, it's kind of a play on words.
Is that what Catholics say or something?
No. It's a common phrase.
For Pete's Sake, I heard that before, yeah. But
So it's like saying the move was for Pete's sake. The move to Massachusetts was for Pete's sake, but everybody else kind of suffered. So that's why I chose that title.
Okay, because I heard that.
Yeah.
I guess I have been ignorant to exactly
No.
what that
It's
means
just a
of
play on
the
words.
Pete's- No, I mean of the phrase.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it too much.
Yeah.
I know here people say it when they're exasperated. For Pete's sake.
Right. Well, this has sort of a different connotation.
Okay, yeah,
And when I mentioned it to my oldest daughter, I'd been rummaging around for a title
yeah,
and telling her kind of the thrust of the book.
yeah.
And I said, I think I'm going to call it For Pete's Sake. And she said, Dad, that's perfect. Because the man's name is Pete Nash. That's the other reason.
Okay.
The lead character is Pete
character
Nash.
in the-
Yeah, I should have mentioned that
Pete.
before. Yeah. So it's the Nash family,
Yeah,
and Pete is the father.
Peter Nash.
Yeah, Peter Nash. So it's For Pete's Sake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I think that works.
Okay,
It works in a couple of different ways.
okay. Now I get it. Well, the last thing I want to ask you is, you have an opportunity now to, my hope is that someday somebody will pick up any of these broadcasts and something they will speak to them. But you have an opportunity to speak to them directly if you want. If you have something that's in your heart that you say, this is the thing that I will share. I don't know if it was my last day, I guess, or if it was the last thing that I would, if I would only have so many words to say in my last words, this is what I would say. So,
So-
how would you?
It's funny you should ask that, because I
Yeah.
heard a song on the radio the other day.
Yeah.
I can't remember it's called Dragons, but I can't remember the person who sings it. But anyway, the message over and over in the song is slay all the dragons that stand in your way. And that would be my advice to people is slay all the dragons that stand in your way. Just overcome your obstacles, your hurdles. And, you know, isn't that what life's all about is, you
There's a
know,
lot of dragons out there.
yeah, yeah,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Slay all your dragons that stand in your way.
yeah.
Well, Mr. Lee, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. It was
Okay.
a pleasure.
You
I
got a
hope
great
have
show. You got a great
as
show
much
here.
good time as I did.
Okay, I did.
And thank you, everybody,
Thank you,
for
Miguel.
watching. We'll hope we'll see you the next time when the next person comes and shares their story.